Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. We're the Movie Couple. I'm Wendy.
I'm Dustin.
And this is our review for Boy Kills World. Boy is a mayhem machine who's been trained to assassinate the bloodthirsty Hilda Vanderkoy and avenge his family's murder. Guided by his sister's mischievous spirit, Boy uncovers one stunning revelation after another as he barrels towards Hilda. This was one of the movies, very few nowadays, that we go into without having watched the trailer. We didn't do a trailer reaction to it. I think a couple of you guys asked. I just think we never were able to get to it just due to like work schedule and whatnot. And in a way, I think that's fun and refreshing to go into a movie blind.
To kind of be able to just go on kind of like the posters that you saw, maybe the vibe. Because I never really saw any of the trailer, but I did see like maybe a couple second movement thing that they had like on a screen for a poster. So I knew, okay, it's a movie with a lot of fighting and some action, and it looks like it's going to be kind of bloody.
Yeah, and I mean, it is bloody. It is a revenge film. Bill Skarsgård is in it. He is going to be in the Crow movie that's coming out later this year. And one of the interesting things about this film, or about his role specifically, is that the character he plays is deaf and mute. Not by choice. Something happens to him when he was younger and that's how so he wasn't born deaf or mute. And essentially, yeah, he is seeking revenge for those who killed his family. So it is a revenge movie, and I was kind of looking up like what was the, like, you know, a lot of times a movie like this with this specific aesthetic usually it's based on like a manga, graphic novel, whatever it may be, video game or something like that. But it wasn't. It's a completely original creative concept, and for that alone, I was quite interested. I do enjoy Bill Skarsgård's performance along with several other people in the cast. So I was excited for it. I think I wasn't really quite prepared because we didn't see the trailer for how wacky and bonkers it was going to be.
Honestly, I think bonkers is a really good way of kind of describing this, because it's like it has a lot of different flavors in it that are a little bit of like fourth wall breaking, but not really fourth wall breaking. But since the character is deaf and mute, there is a narration ability
of
that
his like favorite video game
character's voice. And
which I kind of thought was really funny.
And then you have a the spirit essence of his sister who's following him around, and he's able to communicate with her, but he's not talk to her.
Yeah.
And then he has to like read other people's lips.
Yeah.
And it was just really weird and bonkers just because it was so outside the box. It was just so like, what's going on?
Yeah, and I will say for that, I can really appreciate how much they were willing to like go outside of the box and create something like that, to have a character who can't hear and who can't speak, and then setting up challenges to, you know, have him be able to communicate to the other characters that he meets throughout the movie, and to also kind of like, how do you still get this guy to like narrate the movie? Like, how do we have that dialogue? So like the internal voiceover is really funny, but there were some inconsistencies when it came to how he is able to understand certain characters. He utilizes not sign language, but which is, I thought was going to be the default, but they defaulted to lip reading, and there are some like haha funny moments with that, but not all of them land, and also not really consistent throughout the whole movie. There would also be times where another character is speaking, and he doesn't turn his head until they start speaking, but I'm like, but sir, you cannot hear.
And you would not have reacted to that.
Yeah, unless the person taps you on the shoulder, which they didn't. So there was a little inconsistency that I was like, but I do like the creativeness of it. And the story, you know, we said it's bonker, it's wacky, and it is. If you stay with it and you get to the very end, there is actually something that they reveal I think is actually so good, and I'm glad I sat through the movie to see that play out, because I actually really appreciated that. But this is a movie with a lot of action, with a lot of gore. They're not afraid of like setting loose the limbs and all of that
and
stuff.
The blood splatter and the squishies.
And the squishies. And they got the guy from The Raid is in this movie. So they got Andrew Koji. So I was like, oh, this is going to be like martial arts heaven. Here's my biggest problem with it. is the cinematography. It's not the story. It's not the wackiness of the characters or whatever. Like, I think I could, like, I had fun with all of that. It was the cinematography. It was very jarring. And for so many action scenes, a lot of it they shot, could be wrong about this, it looked like they filmed with the drone, which again, creative. Not completely outside of the box, but like creative, and a lot of work. But it doesn't really work.
No, with these fights, the way that the camera moved, it did look like a drone, or it could have been like some kind of crane that was
Correct.
moving.
Yeah.
But
like a robot arm.
there's, with shaky cam, when all of that movement is happening, it feels like the camera is moving kind of with the action and being bumped by the action. This just made me feel motion sick, to where when the camera would move from one angle to another, you kind of had what was going on in the foreground, but then with the camera motion and the motion of the people, you just immediately kind of went, "Ugh," and you were just like, oh my gosh. I actually got just sometimes dizzy and sick while watching this. And the thing that frustrated me the most, it looked like they had some pretty cool choreography. Like Bill Skarsgård was doing some moves and some martial arts that I'm like, oh, that would
really creative.
Really creative, really interesting way to do a fight. And I'm like, I would have loved to have seen how these moves actually flowed from one to another. I was so distracted by the movement of the camera and just the speed. The movement was also at two different speeds. So it just was so jarring and hard to follow that you're like, oh, that looked cool. Yeah. And then you would get dizzy. So I really wish that they would have had a little bit more feature on some of the movements that they had.
Yeah, and to kind of add what you're talking about is that they would execute like the kill move, right? But the camera, because it feels like they were like using some sort of like tracking feature, it wouldn't track the shot where you would want your eyes to actually focus. It would focus on like something inanimate, like a table or like a chair leg or something like that, which was really frustrating because, again, like Dustin mentioned, a lot of the fight choreography is really unique, really cool looking, and I wish if they had just moved that camera back and give us a master shot or wide shot, it would have been so cool. The whole movie itself is already stylized enough that not every single moment also needed to be. And so it's just kind of like wacky and overdrive. And then it also, I felt like this film wanted to be unique so bad that it took on the identity somehow of a bunch of other films. Like we spotted, like, we're like, okay, it's giving a little Hunger Games. It was giving
maybe like a little bit of John Wickiness, but also it had a little, the way that they wanted to have the fights kind of come out.
Oh, like there was like a Crazy 88 moment.
But then they also wanted to put like a little bit of Deadpool comedy in there.
Yes.
A little bit of like, it wasn't really fourth wall breaking, but it kind of was.
Yeah.
But yet it didn't quite land. And there was just a lot of things that were really weird and bizarre that just, it didn't feel like they had a clear understanding of what exactly they wanted.
Yeah.
And I feel like that just really threw off the tempo and the beat of the movie.
Yeah, it really did. And I think it made it a little bit harder to kind of focus in on that. So when it finally kind of like decided to slow down a little bit in the third act and kind of have that like reveal that I was talking about that I won't tell you here, I was actually really appreciative of that because I was like, oh my gosh, what a moment. And then it all kind of like starts back up again. So in any case, it is certainly something different than anything I've ever seen before. I really wished I felt a different way about the cinematography because it definitely affected the way I feel about the movie. And with that said, I'm going to go ahead and give you our rating for the movie. The Movie Club rating system is listed for you in the video description below. Look, I like the uniqueness and the creativity that the people put into this movie. Like the way they were telling the story and everything is really unique. For the cinematography, not just containing to the fight, but sometimes just in a regular dialogue, it was just a little bit too like psychedelic for me. So I think I'm gonna give this movie a skip it.
For me too. Part of me was like, okay, I can see where they're going with this, but it just doesn't quite land. And there's a lot of things to where you can be you can go out there and make a weird world. You can have all of these weird little twerks and tweaks and just have it be completely off the wall. One of the things that you need though is to respect the reality that you've created. And when you like set certain rules for certain things, you have to make sure that you continue with those. There was a certain running gag that sometimes it was because of this, but then sometimes it didn't happen. With him being deaf, there's times that he would not have reacted certain ways, and just certain other things throughout the world that you're like, wait a second, wasn't that like 10 minutes ago this way? And so a lot of the weirdness just didn't land properly. The fights I was so frustrated with just because of the cinematography. So the main feature of this film really just was covered up, and I'm going to give this a skip it.
And there you have it. Those are our thoughts on Boy Kills World. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below once you've seen the film. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.